So this audio just dropped from Axios that is actually of a transcript that came out, over a year ago, over a year and a half ago, of an interview with then President Biden and Robert Hur, who was interviewing Biden at the time regarding classified documents that he had taken from the White House when he was vice president.
Right.
And it was during this whole scandal that they were having when they were trying to say that Biden and Donald Trump were taking all of these classified documents. And at the time when the transcripts came out, they said that Biden, they said that he stumbled over a few things, that he had forgotten a few things. But they also pinned it and made it seem like Robert Hur was really bullying an old man and that he was really the one that was almost manipulating the situation. And a lot of questions were being asked, and Democrats really came down hard on him. And even just people in general came down really hard on him. Well,
that's what Democrats do.
Exactly. Well, a couple of days ago, Axios came out and somehow found the actual audio of the interview, and they released it to the public. And I'm going to play some of it for you guys because, you'll be able to hear it for yourself.
And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. So if I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, what month did Bo die? May 30th, 2018. Was it 2015 he died?
I think it's 2015.
I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So 2017 here.
That's when you left office, January of 2017.
Okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right.
January.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Correct. And in 2017, Bo had passed.
But in case anybody does not know, with this new audio that's been released, it just further proves the fact that more and more people were aware of just how far President Biden's cognitive decline really was, and at what point people really knew that he was really stumbling and fumbling along in that presidency, and that there was really a concerted effort among White House staffers, among the Democratic Party, and not just the Democratic Party, because, House Speaker Mike Johnson has an interview that he did in January where he talks about when he won the House Speaker, he tried to meet with President Biden several times and that he couldn't, and that there were all these gatekeepers on the White House staff that kept him from meeting with Biden, from talking to Biden or anything like that. And when he finally got a chance to meet with Biden, there was some legislation that he had questions about. And Biden said that he wasn't the one who signed this legislation. That he had no idea anything that he was talking about.
A year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked, I became speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on, and I started requesting a meeting with the president because, I'm kind of old school, I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me.
He didn't bring that message up to anybody. As House Speaker, he didn't bring that to the media. He didn't bring that to anybody in the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. He waited until Donald Trump was already president. Well, actually, at that point, I think when he gave this interview, it was right before the inauguration. So the end of Biden's term.
Right. And he should have brought it up. If that were reversed, you can bet you that Nancy Pelosi would have creamed Donald Trump had he gotten that same level of information. Mike Johnson, again, being Mike Johnson, which, my opinion is very passive instead of being aggressive, especially on something that important. He did also hide it, but you have to look, the entire Democrat Party hid it until it became where they thought it was going to be not to their advantageous for them. And then they were like, okay, Joe, you got to go. Once they found out that they didn't think that he could beat Donald Trump once he gave that debate with Donald Trump. Then they came out and said, okay, this person that we see cannot beat President Trump, so we need to get rid of him. And then what was it? It was Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, so, a couple of other high-level Democrats that then came out and said, you have to drop out of the race, which was extremely unusual. Yeah. And then they just put Kamala in there. They didn't go through any of their procedures or processes. They just put Kamala, and wait a minute. This is the kicker. When they decided after the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and they decided that Joe Biden could not beat Donald Trump, and then Nancy Pelosi asked for him to be replaced, and she tried to force him off the ticket. They threw a curve, and I say it's the Biden family, threw a curve to the Democrat Party, and Joe Biden released a statement on X that he was supporting, that he was endorsing Kamala Harris as the president. And I don't think I don't believe that was anywhere in their plans. I think, but because he endorsed her and he did it publicly and put it on X, so that the whole world can see it, then they didn't have any other choice but to go with her. That is just my take. I think that they did that because they realized that the Democrat Party was going to turn against Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's family said, okay, since you're going to get us, this is our way of getting you back.
I can see that. But to be fair, she probably should have been president before then. You know?
A whole nother conversation. You're absolutely right.
I mean, if he was as bad as everybody is saying that he was, if he was not really able to function, if he was not the one who was really leading our government, then she really should have been president, and she really should have been the one running against Donald Trump from the get-go.
You're absolutely right. And now, okay, the interview that Robert Hur had, I believe was October 8th of 2023. Okay, so you're going back there a whole year before the election. If you look at his cognitive abilities, at that moment, they probably should have used the 25th Amendment and made Kamala the president of the United States. The 25th Amendment, Section 4, states that if they have determined that he cannot uphold his duties as president of the United States, then the vice president is supposed to take over. And I believe that the Democrat Party cheated her out of being the first woman president. She should have been the first woman president. They should have done that in
Sure.
October. And I believe the reason that they did not do it is, first of all, they didn't think she could beat Donald Trump. They thought that they could run Joe Biden and he could beat Donald Trump, but they did not believe Kamala. And the only reason that they stood behind him is because of what the Biden family did when they endorsed her for president. Even if she didn't beat Donald Trump, at least she could have been the first woman president of the United States. So all of these women's groups that were out there pulling for her, and everybody's saying she didn't win. I just heard somebody say she didn't win because she was a woman and all this. All these people that are saying this, blame the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is the reason that she was not the first woman president. Now, would I have wanted her to be? No. I'm gonna really be honest. I think there are other people that I think were better qualified for that position. But I still have to defend her right constitutionally for being the first woman president of the United States.
I still think she would have been better than what we had with Joe at that point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. Now, I'm going to throw something else in there. I think the reason that they did not make her president is whomever was actually acting as president, which we will find out should lead to several long-term investigations, whomever was acting as president felt like they couldn't control her. I think they felt like they could run it better, having him over there and them not having to answer to anything from Joe Biden. But Kamala Harris, had they made her president, they might have had to answer. She might have all of a sudden, they made her president and she might have said, wait a minute,
right?
I am the president of the United States. You did not ask me, and no, I'm not signing that. That's totally different from having a Joe Biden that wouldn't have even known that they asked him. So I'm thinking that Kamala Harris was betrayed by her own party, because even looking at those tapes from October of 2023, when you look at those tapes and just think about it, it would have even made her campaign better. Because she would have at that time been the incumbent president. She would have gotten the benefit of being the incumbent president.
For sure.
And so whomever in the Democrat Party, Democrats, I know they're having some issues right now, some internal issues trying to determine who they are. The people that supported Kamala Harris should be upset about the people who overlooked her for president of the United States. And that's something that should come out when they have all of these hearings to find out who were the people. And I'm not going to assume, I really have no idea who the real people were.
Well, the Wall Street Journal told a lot of them. The Wall Street Journal wrote an entire article about this back in January, and they named names of a lot of people. They were saying which staffers, they were saying who in the Democratic Party. They were naming names, and it was just like everybody ignored it. Everybody saw the article and was like, keep going.
Well, it's like you were even talking about Freedom of Information Act. We have gotten to a point where we have a culture now of ignoring the laws. And when I say we, I don't mean us worker bees. I mean the people that are supposed to uphold the law. They totally ignore laws. It's like I heard one of the congressmen said, what about the Constitution? We don't pay attention to the Constitution, which I hate to hear them say that, but it is absolutely true. They don't pay attention to the Constitution. They use it if it benefits them. If it doesn't benefit them, they will totally ignore the Constitution. And that's something, that's a big issue that we have right now. But I hope in upcoming investigations that they find out from October 8th of 2023. And I say that because if that video was made on October 8th of 2023, you have to try to think, so when did the decline happen? Exactly. That decline did not happen that day. They didn't say he had a stroke or something that day. No. That it was not an event that happened that day. How long does it take for you to get to that level of decline? And why wasn't it? And Kamala Harris's people, and I say this because they're always the people, and people always ask me, why do you always mess with Democrats? I said, because Democrats always mess with everybody else. They are always the ones, they're the bullies. And they're the bullies that hit everybody and then turn around and say somebody hit them. And so now it's time for everybody to hit them and say, Why did you ignore this woman that should have been the legal president at that time? And I'm going to say this again. I am not questioning her abilities. I am not saying one thing about me supporting her. I'm not saying that she would have been good, because I really probably, but she couldn't have been any worse. That's all I can say. She couldn't have been any worse than us not having a president that was coherent, a president that knew what was going on in the country.